Imagine you do like the exact right thing.
Okay.
You quietly step into this volatile, really difficult situation to help someone who is being mistreated.
Right.
You don't make a scene. You just, stand your ground, de-escalate everything, and then you go home feeling this rare, quiet sense of peace.
That sounds ideal, honestly.
It does. But then the next morning, you wake up, check your phone, and discover that a 15-second clip of that exact moment has gone totally viral.
Oh, no. The internet got hold of it.
Exactly. And the video is completely stripped of context, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the internet has collectively decided that actually you are the villain.
Wow.
Yeah, the entire narrative of your quiet good deed is it's inverted. What do you even do?
I mean, it is a total nightmare scenario, right? But it perfectly encapsulates this very modern dilemma we all face. It illustrates how rapidly a personal act of integrity can just be transformed into public spectacle.
Right. And that friction, like the space between trying to do the right thing in the real world and navigating how that action is perceived, or, let's be real, totally distorted by everyone else. That is exactly what we are jumping into today.
That's a huge topic.
It is. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today, our mission is to explore that exhausting tension. We're looking at a really fascinating narrative text called Consistency of the Unseen Good, and we are focusing on a protagonist named Roger.
Right. Roger finds himself caught right in the teeth of this exact trap you just described.
He really does. And I think anyone who has felt that, that information overload and the social media outrage cycle, you're going to have a major aha moment today about why doing good in this hyper-connected world feels so incredibly draining.
Absolutely. Because to understand Roger's position, we really have to look at the immediate aftermath of his action.
Yeah, set the scene for us.
So he recently had this realization that moral responsibility isn't about saving the entire world, right? It's about standing firm in your principles without an audience.
No applause needed.
Exactly. And he acted on that by protecting an old man on a street corner during a really tense incident. No fanfare at all.
But the morning after this quiet good deed, reality just completely intrudes.
As it always does.
Right. Early the next day, Roger gets a direct message from his nephew that just says, "Did you see it last night?"
Such a dreaded text to wake up to.
The worst. And when Roger asks what he means, the nephew replies, "The video going around on social media."
Yeah.
And the text specifically notes Roger's physical reaction here, which I found so relatable.
Oh, the chest tightness.
Yes. Before he even opens the message, he feels a tightness in his chest. He anticipates the distortion before he even sees it.
Yeah, he tells his nephew, "I didn't open it, but I can guess." And his instinct is entirely accurate.
Totally.
The nephew confirms it's a video of the exact incident from the day before. The same street, the same old man, the same harsh officer.
Yeah.
But someone else recorded it.
Which completely shifts the power dynamic.
Exactly. It is no longer a lived experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a piece of content.
And Roger fundamentally refuses to engage with it. I mean, he doesn't even watch the clip.
Which is pretty impressive restraint.
It really is. He just asks his nephew, well, what kind of video is it? And the nephew explains that it's very short, the officer looks harsh, the old man looks humiliated, and get this, the comment section is fully radicalized.
Oh, of course it is.
Yeah. Later on, the aunt points out that the people commenting are, quote, either very angry or very certain.
What's fascinating here is the psychology of why those comment sections devolve so quickly.
Let's hear it.
So the nephew makes a crucial observation about the nature of this viral clip. He says the video has, quote, no context, no before, no after.
Right. Just the messy middle.
Exactly. And when you remove the connective tissue of a human interaction, a video stops being documentation. It just becomes a blank canvas for everyone's pre-existing grievances.
Wow, a blank canvas for grievances. That makes so much sense.
Because the human brain naturally rejects ambiguity, right?
Yeah.
If we see a snapshot of conflict but lack the surrounding story, we just invent the story to fill the void.
And usually the story we invent is one that justifies our own anger.
You hit the nail on the head.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the uncle in the narrative, who operates as this sort of philosophical anchor for the family, he makes a profound statement about this exact dynamic.
He does.
He tells them that this is precisely why, quote, goodness does not love display. Because putting something on display inherently shatters the context, leaving behind this fractured, incomplete reality.
Right. By dragging an act of goodness into the arena of public display, you subject it to the algorithms of outrage, The before and the after are where the actual humanity lives. The during that spike of conflict is just spectacle.
I mean, I understand the mechanism he is describing there, but I struggle with the uncle's advice here. I really do.
How so?
It just borders on apathy to me.
Yeah.
Like the aunt pushes back in the text, and I am entirely on her side. She says, but when we stay silent, the wrong story grows stronger.
That is a very valid fear.
Right. Think about looking through a keyhole into a room. You look through this tiny opening and you see two people wrestling aggressively on the floor.
Okay.
It looks violent, but because you're looking through a keyhole, you miss the rest of the room. You don't see that one person is actually trying to stop the other from touching a live electrical wire.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah. If you are the person saving a life and thousands of people are calling you a monster based on that keyhole view, aren't you obligated to kick the door open and correct the record?
You feel like you have to defend yourself.
Exactly. Instead of just letting people be angry and certain about a lie, by refusing to explain, aren't you basically ceding the truth to whoever has the loudest algorithmic megaphone?
Well, you are assuming that kicking the door open actually changes the minds of the people looking through the keyhole.
Oh.
It feels passive to stay silent only if you view moral action as a public debate that needs to be definitively won. But the uncle completely rejects that premise.
Okay, so what does he suggest instead?
When Roger asks in frustration, then what do? Make a statement, write a comment. The uncle deliberately waits before answering.
Building the suspense.
Right. And then he says, not every misunderstanding demands an explanation. Some require consistency.
Some require consistency.
Wow.
And the nephew tries to process what that looks like in reality, realizing it means standing in the same place again and again.
Exactly.
And the uncle confirms this with a heavy statement, which is, civilization is not a one-time reaction, but a habit.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really need to define what he means by civilization in this context.
Yeah, because he doesn't mean roads and bridges.
No, he isn't talking about cities or governments or the justice system. He is talking about the internal infrastructure of a human being.
Oh, I love that. Internal infrastructure.
Right. Civilization is the set of boundaries and rules you establish for yourself so that your internal world doesn't devolve into chaos.
So true.
Because if your morality is merely a series of reactions to public outrage, if you are constantly drafting statements to defend your reputation, you don't possess an internal civilization.
You are just a reflex.
Exactly. True moral standing requires the endurance of a habit.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because that concept of internal infrastructure is exactly what Roger immediately tests out.
He puts it right into practice.
He does. Later that same afternoon, she walks back to the exact street corner where the original incident occurred. But now, the old man isn't there. The street is completely empty.
No conflict.
None. There was no conflict to resolve, there was no audience to impress, and there's certainly no camera to film him. Yet he stops and he stands there anyway, totally unnoticed.
He is maintaining the infrastructure.
Right. It's the unglamorous maintenance work. It reminds me of how a city functions. Like, responding to a massive fiery sinkhole on the news is dramatic, right?
Oh, yeah, lots of cameras for that.
Exactly. The mayor gets to hold a press conference, the heroes are interviewed. It's a very clear narrative. But true civilization is actually the invisible work of a sanitation worker checking the water pressure at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday.
That is such a great analogy.
Nobody is giving out awards for that. It never goes viral. But without that quiet, mundane, habit-like brushing your teeth versus performing dramatic, life-saving surgery, the entire city collapses.
And you don't check the water pressure to prove to the neighborhood that you are a good person. You do it because it is the necessary maintenance of living.
But that creates an inevitable problem. How do you maintain that quiet habit when every instinct screams at you to prove you're the good guy? If you strip away all public validation, all the press conferences, and you just commit to doing the unglamorous maintenance work in the dark, the moral habit becomes incredibly lonely.
It really does.
And the narrative shifts in Scene 8 to explore this exact emotional toll. Days go by. The text notes that the streets remain the same, and the news cycle has already moved on to the next outrage. But for Roger, a heavyweight remains.
Yeah, he gathers with his family in their virtual room, and he just strips away all the philosophical theorizing. He just confesses, I'm tired.
I'm tired. And the family doesn't offer hollow encouragement either. They validate the weight of that sentence.
They get it.
The nephew agrees, noting that being, quote, constantly careful wears you down inside. The ant begins to question their collective sanity, asking if they are just too sensitive or if the world is really this harsh.
They're experiencing the intense isolation that comes when the internal habit collides with an indifferent world.
Exactly. And Roger eventually asks the darkest question yet, the question that I think everyone who tries to engage ethically with the world eventually hits.
What's he ask?
He says, while we are being so careful, others don't seem to care at all. Then what does our stance actually change? He's looking at people living with reckless disregard, seemingly without consequence, and wondering if his carefulness is entirely pointless.
It's the crisis of utility. The nephew wonders if it's all for nothing, and the aunt adds that being so misunderstood breaks your spirit.
This is so bleak.
It is, but the uncle refuses to comfort them with false promises of eventual victory or cosmic justice. He tells them, fatigue is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is a sign that the path has begun.
Wow.
He reminds them they didn't choose this path for a specific result. If they had, they would have abandoned it already.
Right.
Roger asks why they chose it, and the uncle answers simply, to remain human.
Man. I mean, I understand the philosophy of detaching from outcomes, and there is a certain nobility in it, but I have to push back on this extreme level of stoicism.
Okay, let's hear the pushback.
Imagine you are running on a treadmill, but you are in a room that is pitch black.
Okay, spooky.
Right. You are sweating, your muscles are burning, you're putting in serious, grueling work. But because you cannot see the display panel in the dark, you have no idea how far you've gone. You can't see the scenery change.
No feedback loop.
Exactly. You have zero feedback loop. At a certain point, the human mind starts to fracture. We are biologically wired to need some proof that our effort is making a dent in the physical world. Isn't it just basic human nature to want some proof that our carefulness is actually making a dent in the universe?
It is. It is a completely natural psychological need to want that feedback loop. We are social creatures who navigate the world through external validation.
Thank you. So I'm not crazy.
Not at all. But the uncle's argument pivots here in a way that diagnoses the exact root cause of their exhaustion. He argues that the desire for the feedback loop, the need to see the numbers on the treadmill, is actually what is draining their energy, not the physical running itself.
Let's break down the mechanics of that, because that is a very fine distinction.
It is. The uncle delivers this devastating truth bomb to the group. He says, being good does not exhaust a person. Trying to appear good does.
Wow.
Right. Let's examine the cognitive load of appearing good. When you perform a good deed, it requires a certain baseline amount of energy. But when you want to appear good, you are suddenly tracking dozens of external variables.
Like what?
Like, how did that person interpret my action? Did I use the right tone of voice? Who might be recording this? How will this play out if it's taken out of context online?
Oh, man. Yes.
You are constantly monitoring your own reflection in other people's eyes. It is exactly like running a massive hidden background application on your phone. You aren't actively using the app, but it is draining your battery to zero because it is constantly refreshing data, searching for a signal, and pulling resources in the background.
That reframes the burnout entirely. The exhaustion isn't coming from the act of standing on the street corner. The exhaustion is the background app of reputation management constantly running in their minds.
Precisely. The uncle suggests that if they are tired, it is because, perhaps without even noticing it, they've started trying to prove themselves to an invisible audience, or they are secretly harboring an expectation of applause.
And the family's reaction to this diagnosis is surprisingly honest.
They don't get defensive.
Not really. The nephew actually admits the uncomfortable truth. He asks, so, even while doing what is right, could we still be expecting applause?
It takes guts to admit that.
It does. And the uncle tells him that this is possible, and that it is simply a part of being human. But he emphasizes that once it is recognized, it must be let go.
This raises an important question, though. The aunt realizes the immense difficulty of this discipline, noting that walking this path requires, quote, constantly checking oneself.
Right.
But the uncle assures her that this constant internal auditing doesn't diminish a person. It purifies them. It strips away the ego and the cognitive load of that background app, leaving only the essential action.
So what does this all mean? Like, for anyone listening who feels utterly burned out by their attempts to navigate complex social issues or just improve their community?
It means you have to ask yourself, is the physical work of your cause actually draining you? Or are you being crushed under the heavy, invisible burden of managing the optics of your morality?
That is such a powerful question. And Roger takes this diagnosis really seriously. He makes a definitive choice about how to move forward.
What does he decide?
He tells the group he has decided to stop sharing for a while.
A digital fast.
Essentially, yeah. But the most crucial detail here is that he does not stop acting. He uncouples his actions from the display of those actions.
He removes the audience to purify the motive.
Yes. The very next day, he passes through that same street. He slows his pace. The narrative notes, no one was there, but he was. He internalizes the reality that doing what is right isn't a public highway where you log miles for everyone to see. It is a path chosen again and again, entirely within a person.
By shutting down that background app of reputation management, he preserves his energy for the habit itself. He's no longer running on the treadmill, hoping someone turns the lights on to applaud his sweat. He is running simply to keep his heart beating, to maintain his own internal civilization.
Which forces a massive pivot in how we measure our own endurance. So, listeners, the next time you feel your blood pressure spiking over a contextless viral video, or you feel the heavy burnout of just trying to be a decent person in a hyper-connected, deeply critical world, take a moment to check your internal dashboard. Ask yourself what kind of fuel is actually powering your engine.
Right. Are you running on the high-octane but incredibly volatile fuel of expected applause? Because that tank empties the exact moment the crowd looks away. Or worse, misunderstands your intent? Or are you running on the quiet, self-sustaining energy of consistency, regardless of who notices?
It leaves you wondering about the true nature of integrity, honestly. We have all heard the old adage that character is what you do when no one is watching.
A classic.
Right. But looking at Roger's journey, that definition feels incomplete, because doing the right thing in the dark is relatively easy. There's no social friction. There's no risk of misinterpretation.
That's very true.
Perhaps the ultimate test of character isn't what you do when you're alone in the dark. Perhaps the true test is what you continue to do when everyone is watching, the cameras are rolling, and the world is getting your motives completely, entirely wrong.
That is a thought to sit with for a while.
It really is. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.